What's up guys, Alex here. Today I want to talk to you guys about a trend that I have seen in dating coaches in the manosphere from pickup artists. And this is the tendency to tell men, young men, who would be in their 18 to 20s to the mid 20s, I believe this is the audience that is targeted, that they should effectively wait until they are in their 30s, their mid 30s even, before they start to date. This manifests in a lot of ways. We see it, for example, in the Sigma male meme. You should just focus on your grind, focus on your studies, focus on your hustle, on building a career, on entrepreneurship, etc., etc. The idea is that you should focus on these things, and then when you reach your 30s, you will be more attractive to women. And additionally, that if you do not focus on those things now, if you focus on relationships with women, that will hinder your efforts at your goals, at success, at whatever else you are doing. Now, I've been thinking about this for a while, and truly, this is uniquely bad dating advice. I don't want to be hostile to anyone specifically, so I'm not naming any names here, and I think this is advice that is so common that you probably all can think of many people who have said it and who are currently telling young men to wait. And I think also, additionally, in the worst of cases, assuming the worst, this is also very self-serving advice from dating coaches, from people who make money from pickup artistry online, on YouTube, on websites, or wherever they may be marketing themselves. Because if you tell men, if you tell men, you're a dating coach, right? Men are coming to you because they want to date. You're telling men, no, wait until you're 30, wait until you're 30. They don't know if any advice you give them, any tips, any tricks, whatever, is going to work at all. And they can delay producing any results for you ostensibly until you are in your 30s. You're starting at 18 or 20, the target audience for this advice. So with that quick introduction, I want to give you guys a list of 7 reasons why I think this is very bad dating advice. Like most of the things on this channel, this is going to be grounded in psychology and mainstream psychology related to attraction and to relationships. So without further ado, I want to look at point number 1. Point number 1 is very simple. You do not want to wait. And I'm not telling you you do not want to wait. I'm saying this is how most of you actually feel. You've sought out these pickup artists, these dating coaches, probably this channel for some of you. If you found me elsewhere where I have more followers, probably in those other platforms where you first found my content. You found this content because you want to date. You are a man or a woman who wants to know about how to have successful relationships, how to attract the opposite sex, what makes relationships work, and it's something that you are interested in. If you wanted to wait until you were 30 to date, you would not need a pickup artist to tell you wait until you're 30. So this is your motive. And people telling you, oh no, that shouldn't be your goal, shouldn't be your motive. No, it is, but it is though, and you have to be honest with yourself. This is something that you're interested in. This is why you did it. And here's the thing, guys, there's something that has been observed in research, psychological research on young men for decades now, and this is called the loneliness gap. Between about 18 to 30, in those 20s, this is when young men report being the loneliest. And I've seen some men refer to this as if it's a modern phenomenon. No, but this is something that has always been the case. So a lot of you guys are coming to these channels, you're looking for advice and you're looking for help and you're looking for a girlfriend. It's that simple. You want to be loved, you want to have a girlfriend because you feel lonely. And not just lonely, but you probably don't want to miss out on experiences. You see, if you are 18 to 25, for example, about half of your peers, 50% more or less of men in that age group, and slightly more women, are in relationships. So you're seeing at least half of your peers enjoying relationships, enjoying sex, enjoying dating, and you're missing out, and you feel like you're missing out, and you don't want to. So don't let people tell you that you need to defer your goals and that you shouldn't feel the way that you should feel. It's a totally normal feeling, and if you're not making those emotional connections, those relationships, those sexual connections it's perfectly normal if you feel like you're missing out and you don't want to. And guys, you really don't have to either. Like I just said, about 50% of men in that young adult cohort are in relationships, and there's probably no reason why you also cannot be in a similar relationship. It's a realistic goal, and it's a goal that you desire. So you have to come to terms with that. Be honest with yourself. Don't defer your desire or kind of make it a vicarious thing on the side that you pursue through hustle or through work or whatever, focusing on your work so that you don't focus on other things in your life that you actually want. Great. So moving on to point number 2. So it is developmentally important that you experience relationships and that you learn how to form relationships between your 20s and your 30s. This is based on what is called Erikson's stages of development. Erik Erikson was a psychologist, and this is actually one of the developmental theories that has been most widely researched in the entire field of developmental psychology. And the idea is that as you go through different ages of life, you go through different stages of life, and you have major goals within those stages that you either need to accomplish or you fail. And if you fail at these goals, it stays with you the rest of your life. It stunts you emotionally and developmentally. And in the worst case, perhaps you never recover. You miss that stage and you do not get another chance, because those are developmental points that coincide with your age at that point. Age 20 is where it begins what is called the intimacy versus isolation stage. And as you may already deduce from the name of that, this is where you learn to build romantic connections, where you date, where you get into monogamous relationships, where you have sex, where you learn how to interact romantically with the opposite gender or with the same gender, if that is what you prefer. And this developmental stage continues until the late 30s. But that doesn't mean that you should wait until your mid-30s. It means that you need to get on it, basically, in your early 20s, in your 20s. And the longer you wait, the more you delay that, the more likely you are to miss your development of intimacy, and the more likely you are to be stuck in isolation. I think this is probably why we see men that struggle to form relationships in their 20s being the same men that struggle to form relationships later in life. And again, it is actually the same with women as well. In fact, all of this video, guys, all of this applies more or less equally to women as it does to men. If you go through your 20s struggling to form relationships, you do not form close relationships, it's going to haunt you later in life. You're going to have missed that point, and you're going to struggle to recover from it. So moving on now to point number 3. This one is a little more applicable to men specifically. Although, as I said in point number 2, most of this video is going to be applicable equally to men and women. But that is that men who have a lack of experience both in sex and in relationships are perceived as less desirable by women. We see this, for example, in this study on virginity. Male virginity is perceived by women as being a less attractive trait. Interestingly, so is a very high partner count. It's perceived as a less attractive trait by both men and women. So what women want to see, and I think what this shows us, is that you have experience forming relationships in a serially monogamous fashion. Thus, you should not have a huge gap of no relationships. You should not have never had sex. That says, hey, what's wrong with this guy? At the same time, if you've had a lot of partners and you're single, that might also signal like, this is not a dependable person. This is not a person who I can count on to form a healthy sexual relationship with me. If it gets to the point of marriage or a child, is he going to be there to take care of the child? From an evolutionary perspective, actually, this makes a lot of sense, and it would be consistent with theories in evolutionary psychology that indicate a man that is essentially virile, that is able to produce a child, that is important and attractive, but at the same time, so is a man who stays around, not someone who simply hits it and leaves the child to be raised by a single mother. That isn't a trait that would have been selected for evolutionarily. And this is also related to something called pre-selection, which you may have heard of elsewhere. Pre-selection is the idea that men are perceived as more attractive if they are selected by other women in some way. For example, this is one hypothesis for why married men may be more attractive, may be perceived as more attractive, even controlling for physical attractiveness, because when other women desire them, it signals, he has been selected by them, so he probably has good traits that would be desirable for me as well. Absent any other information, this pre-selection predicts perceptions of attractiveness. And when controlling for personality traits, physical attractiveness, pre-selection also has some utility in predicting perceived attractiveness. And when you indicate that you have never had a relationship before, that women have not historically found you attractive, that you're a virgin, or that women don't want to have sex with you, that may actually work against pre-selection. It may be sending a similar signal to women that, this is an undesirable man. He has been consistently undesirable in the past. What is going on with him? I wonder why that is. Think about it like big gaps in your resume, guys. And the dating market, think of it like a normal market. If you have big gaps in your resume, an employer will think, what's going on with this person? And they will ask you. And if you have big gaps in your dating resume, women and men, they will ask you. And you will have to be, sometimes, not always, but sometimes you will have to explain, like, why were you single for so long? What happened? So anyway, moving on to point number 4. If you wait all the way to your 30s to have relationships, you are going to be woefully unequipped and inexperienced with relationship matters. This is true both for casual dating, for just approaching women on the street, for flirting, as well as for actual relationship skills. This is something that you are only going to learn from experience, guys. And this is true for most applied skills. You can read all about it. You can watch all the YouTube videos you want. You can do everything to make yourself more attractive on paper. But if you have no experience in a relationship, if you have no experience interacting with women, talking to women, actually attracting women, this is like someone who has read books on violins for years but has never touched a violin. You're not going to be able to pick the violin up and play it, guys. You're not going to know how. You have to practice this skill repeatedly. This is probably why first relationships usually don't make it. Very few people are with their first partner. And most people report early relationships being kind of a mistake, going kind of badly. We make most of our mistakes in our early relationships, and ideally, we learn from those and subsequent relationships become better. This is probably also one of the reasons why relationships formed later in life often tend to last longer as well. People are more experienced. Guys, if you have no experience dealing with feelings in a relationship, like anger at your partner, at jealousy, if you don't know how to navigate a conflict or an argument, you don't even know how you're going to react. You don't have the experience to know if you're going to react badly, how to respond if your partner reacts badly. No one can tell you these things on paper, guys. These are things that you have to learn in the school of hard knocks, so to speak, of relationships, by doing it over and over and over. And if you're lucky, by the time you are in your 30s, you will have some of these things down from experience, and that is what will make you a more attractive partner in your 30s. It's not like you're just going to hit 30 and, now I'm more attractive because I have a career or something. That might add to your attractiveness, but the things that give you skills in relationships and make you a better partner, those are things that you are learning and developing all in your 20s. And if you go into your 30s without that, you're going to have the emotional development of a young man, a young teenager. And that's not going to help you, guys. And additionally, related to that, you will have no experience with sex. Do you think women won't be able to tell on your first sexual experience, if you're having hookups, if you're in a relationship, that you're bad at sex? Would you even know the difference between sexual compatibility and incompatibility? A lot of guys don't realize this because they don't have a lot of sex. But if you are a man who has had a lot of sex, you probably know there are some women that you had sex with that the connection is great. Right from the bat, you like the same things and you get pleasure in very similar ways, and the connection is perfect. And there's other women who, even if she's very pretty, there's no connection at all. You like different things and it just doesn't work out. But if you have never had a relationship until your 30s, are you going to experience that? Will you be able to know right off the bat? In fact, if you have lived your entire 20s with such scarcity, are you even going to be emotionally strong enough to move on, to say no to a woman and to next for a more compatible partner? These are only things that you're going to learn if you're doing them throughout your 20s, throughout that 10 to 12 years of experience to build up to that point. So again, moving on now, point number 5. Point number 5 is a really big one, guys. This is a numbers issue, a statistics issue, and it is also a qualitative issue, both. By the time you hit your 30s, your dating pool is going to be much, much smaller. From the 30s up is when we see the fewest singles. Okay, men and women. Your dating pool is much smaller. I ran the GSS statistics, the General Social Survey, for the last 10 years, between 2012 and the current year, or I guess the last year, 2021, which you can see on my website, and I will put a chart up here to give you an example of that. But consistently, every year, and this is a pattern that goes back as far back as the data goes, we see very few people who are still single in their 30s. So your dating pool is much smaller. That's bad, guys. It's going to make dating harder for you if your dating pool is smaller, not easier. Additionally, there is a big question about the quality of the people who are left in the dating pool. If most people have managed to pair up into monogamous relationships by the time they are 30, and they stay that way essentially the rest of their life, that same percentage of people, do you think the quality of your dating pool is going to be higher or lower than it would have been in your early 20s? I mean, most likely it's going to be lower. These are people that, for whatever reason, have consistently been unable to form a relationship, be they men or women. The people I like to call good relationship havers, these are people who have the behavioral traits, perhaps the physical traits as well, the personality traits, that make them good at forming relationships and staying in relationships. And these people do not stay single for very long. These are people who have consistently formed relationships over the life. Maybe they get married early. Maybe they just get into relationships early. And they stay in relationships consistently, perhaps not the same relationship their entire life, like a lifelong marriage, but a relationship for 4 years, and then they're single for 3 or 4 months, and they get into a new relationship for 6 years, and then they break up and they're single again for 6 months. So they don't stay single very long, and then they get into relationships and they're off the market for a long period of time. These are people who desire monogamous relationships and who are good enough at them that they stay in these monogamous relationships for large chunks of their lives. And this describes most people. Most people will form these serially monogamous relationships over the course of their life. It's essentially the dominant human mating pattern. And people that don't, this is related, I have an article on my website called The Meme of Promiscuity and Pair Bonding. And there is a meme in the manosphere that a lot of sex will damage the ability of people to pair bond. But I think what the research actually shows is that some people it's heritable, it's genetic. Some people are born with an impaired ability to pair bond, and these are the people who are going to remain single for most of their lives. And if it's not just this impaired pair bonding, which is probably just explains a sliver of the variance, they're probably people who are less attractive on average, less physically attractive. They're probably less agreeable, trait agreeableness, for example, in the ocean, the Big Five personality model. They're not going to be partners in general who are as good as the people who are already taken. It's just going to get harder, guys, the longer you wait. Moving on now, point number 6. For point number 6, I have a 6A and a 6B. The 6A here is going to be for men. And this narrative that you should wait until your 30s because you're going to have a career and you're going to have money. Guys, this is just telling you to lead with your wallet. You've heard the term in the manosphere, the beta bucks. This is essentially what it's encouraging. And I don't like this term because actually I think providership and physical attractiveness and dominance and leadership, these are actually all very, very closely linked. And I have an article on the website as well on this topic called What the Manosphere Gets Wrong About Alphas and Betas. So the idea that providership is a beta trait, it's not really supported in psychology in the research literature. The best providers tend to be more attractive men on average. But if you have nothing else that makes you attractive by the time you hit 30, and all you have is this career or this lifestyle that you have managed to create because you become a high earner, what kind of women do you think that is going to attract, guys? It's going to attract women who are mostly interested in your things. And this is something that's going to be attractive to all women, right? I'm not saying otherwise. A good lifestyle, a high income, a good job. Okay, these are high status indicators. They're attractive in general, on average, to most women. We're speaking in a generality here. But if that is the only thing you have going for you, what are women really going to be attracted to? Are they going to be attracted to you and your behavior, your personality, your looks, your charisma, the way that you have sex? Do you please them in bed? You don't know, because you have done none of those things. All you have is this lifestyle and this income. And that's the problem with leading with your wallet, guys. Now, point 6B for the girls. Women, girls, young women, and women in your 30s. Unfortunately, the research overwhelmingly shows that men prefer younger women. The peak attractiveness of women is about 25. The older a woman gets, the less attractive she is rated on average. Now, I don't believe in the wall, the manosphere narrative, the wall, that women who are attractive throughout their 20s are going to party and have a lot of fun. They're going to hit their 30s and they're going to be totally undesired. It's a cope, guys. That's not what's going to happen. Women who are attractive and who form relationships throughout their 20s, they're going to be in relationships in their 30s. It doesn't matter what they do. They're going to find someone that doesn't care about their history or whatever men in the manosphere seem to care about. They're going to be in relationships. The women that are going to struggle, and this is primarily who this message is for, are the women who were unable to form relationships in their 20s. Precisely the same as the men who are going to struggle. The people who have trouble forming relationships and attracting the opposite sex in their 20s, be it attracting the opposite sex or trouble forming relationships for behavioral or personality differences, they are going to be the ones that continue to struggle in their 30s, okay? So, moving on now to the last point, point number 7. People that tell you to wait until your 30s are telling you as well. A major theme of this narrative is that you should not waste time forming relationships. You should be focused on your hustle and your grind. Maintaining a relationship, guys, it is not that time consuming. Dating is not that time consuming. And if you want to have relationships as an adult in your 30s, you need to master the skill. Look back to point number 4, touching on the same theme here. You need to master the skill of balancing your romantic relationships with everything else in life you want to do. With your hobbies, with your work, with school, or whatever it may be. You're not going to have more free time once you have an established career and lifestyle. You're probably not going to have more free time at any point in the future than you did in college. And you're probably not going to have more opportunities to meet women, which of course we covered in point 5 as well. So this idea that you're wasting your time pursuing relationships, it's probably a cope, guys. I don't know any other way to put it. It's not that time consuming. And it's worth it to prioritize that time for your relationships. And if you want relationships in the future, you got to learn to do it. There's no other way around it. You're not going to have more time later. So, conclusion here, a few final points, and then I will sign out. All of the things that make you more attractive in your 30s are basically things that you learn and do in your 20s. When people tell you to wait until your 30s, I think what they get right is that the things you do in your 30s, such as building a good physique, in your 20s, such as building a good physique, going to school and graduating, getting an advanced education, building a career, having a higher income, those will affect your attractiveness in your 30s. But the same is true for all of your relationship experience, guys. You can't go into your 30s thinking you're going to be more attractive if behaviorally and mentally you are basically an 18-year-old child or teenager. That's one of the reasons why men are more attractive in their 30s. That's one of the reasons why men are more masculine in their 30s. Because all of that experience with women makes you more confident with women. All of that experience with sex makes you better at sex. But if you have done none of those things, you're going to enter your 30s as a boy. And that is not going to help you at all, guys. So the final advice, the take-home point here, is you really need to prioritize your relationships in your 20s. Prioritize them as much as you would anything else, because it's really important. It really is, guys. It really is. These are skills that you need to practice and learn, just like any other applied skill in your life as well. Assuming you value these things, of course. If you've decided to drop out of dating completely, I mean, ignore everything. But don't think it's going to get easier for you, boom, when you hit 30, because if you ignore it now, it's definitely not going to be easier for you later in life. And keep in mind Maslow's hierarchy. In Maslow's hierarchy, your interpersonal relationships, your romantic relationships with the opposite sex, they show up on 2 points of the pyramid. Guys, down at the bottom for your reproductive needs, your sex, your biological urge, and then higher, and I hope you guys don't remain at the bottom like an animal, but higher, the need for love, the need for an intimate relationship. This is a human need. And while some people will be fine without it, most people won't. And many people will tell themselves that they will be fine without it. They won't. And many people will suffer for years. For example, anyone who tries to delay forming relationships in their 20s, thinking they don't need that or that they can postpone it, and they're not going to be happy that way. It's not going to work. So I hope you guys have learned something here. Like, subscribe to the channel. Check out the articles on the website that go into these topics in more depth, and I hope I can talk to you guys again very soon.